Hi, welcome back to Museum at Home. Now today we are travelling back in time, way back to the time of King John, who was a medieval king. We're going to be learning about the life of this king and what the people actually thought about him by looking closely at his tomb, which is at Worcester Cathedral. We are going to be history detectives and we'll look for clues on the tomb itself that can tell us something about this famous English king. Now, John was born in the year 1166 and he was the youngest child of King Henry II. No one expected him to be king. He had 4 brothers who were all in line for the throne before him. Now, if you have ever read the Robin Hood stories, or if you've ever seen a film about the legendary hero who robbed from the rich and gave to the poor, then you might remember the character, the evil Prince John. Now, that prince had taken his brother Richard the Lionheart's throne and was ruling the country and taxing all the citizens. Now, that character was based on the real Prince John, who later became King John of England. Now, as it so happened, each of John's brothers died, so that eventually it was John's turn to be king. But what do we know about John as a king? Well, we know certainly that today, at least, he has got a rather bad reputation. He was famous for raising taxes, for losing all of his territories in France, and for imprisoning people illegally. In fact, the barons of England became so fed up with John's behaviour that eventually they went to war with him. In the year 1215, they forced the king to seal the famous Magna Carta, or Great Charter. Now, this charter, this document, limited the king's power in certain ways, and it made it clear that even the king himself was subject to the rule of law. And sealing this document was a huge moment in history. Now, did you notice that I said that the king sealed the document rather than he signed it, as we would today? Can you guess why? Well, 800 years ago, a seal, or a special imprint made on a piece of wax, was the way to put your name to a document and to authorise it. So, John's seal on copies of the charter would show that he, the king himself, had approved it. So, instead of saying he signed the document, we often say he sealed it. Now, John died just a year after he signed the Magna Carta, and he was buried at Worcester Cathedral in the county of Worcestershire in England. He knew Worcester quite well. He used to hunt in the forests nearby, and he stayed there on a number of occasions, including twice at Christmas. He was a big fan of Saint Wulfstan, a saint who was buried in Worcester Cathedral, and perhaps this influenced his decision to be buried in that particular cathedral. Now, the tomb itself, the tomb of King John, can tell us lots about him, lots about his reign, and a lot about what people at the time thought about him. It's actually the oldest effigy or tomb sculpture of a king in England, and it is carved out of marble. Now, we're going to look for clues to find a little bit more about him. First of all, how can we tell that this is the effigy of a king? Well, there is one very big clue. Can you guess what it is? Of course, it's his crown. But can you spot the little dips and holes in the crown and at the top of his robe as well? What could have been in those holes? Well, legend has it that these dips contained the most beautiful precious gems as decorations. But not long after the effigy was put in place, they had all been stolen. Now, what can that tell us about people's reactions to the king? I wonder. Now, take a look at John's sword. In an effigy, we would expect someone to be shown in the best light possible. After all, the sculpture is meant to commemorate or to celebrate someone. But look closely at the sword. Can you spot that the sword has a chunk missing? Now, this isn't by accident. This actually tells us something about King John. Now, John was sometimes known as John Lackland because he lost so much land in France, and he was thought to be a very bad warrior, which in those days was a really important trait for a king to have. Now, the artist who created this tomb reminds us of this by making his sword broken and useless. Now, how about the king's feet? There's something underneath them. Can you work out what it is? It is definitely an animal, but what kind of animal? If you look very closely, you will see that it is a lion. Now, remember, lions are often associated with royalty and with England. What animal can you find on the back of an England football shirt? 3 lions. And hundreds of years ago, important people would have their effigies with an animal lying patiently at their feet. That was meant to show the idea that people were loyal or faithful to them. But look carefully at the lion beneath John's feet. What is it doing? It's biting the king's sword. Now, why would the artist show the lion doing that? What do you think? Well, if we think about the idea that the animal at the feet of the statue shows people's loyalty and respect, perhaps this naughty lion is showing that people didn't respect their king. Perhaps the lion is rather like the barons getting John to seal the Magna Carta. We could certainly say that the barons bit back at their king. So, the tomb here at Worcester Cathedral is full of clues about the life of King John. And we can use this tomb to help us to learn more about the king, about his life, and about medieval history. If you'd like to do some follow-up activities on the theme of the medieval King John, go to the Museum at Home website, or you can find the link to the activities in the description underneath this YouTube video. Next time on Museum at Home, join me in exploring the amazing world of ancient Greece through some incredible Greek pottery held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. So, see you next time for Museum at Home.